Hello. Okay, so I look a little bit crazy today. I apologize for that. In my house, it's either you get to put on regular clothes and do your hair or your makeup. You don't get to do both. So, no makeup. But I have on regular clothes and I have my hair done. So, okay, I am at Kroger and I'm going to just walk you guys through. I don't have a list or anything with me. Even though I made that list this morning, I didn't print one for myself, so I'm going to kind of go based off of memory, but I'm just going to show you some of the things that we look at when we are shopping in the grocery store, and some of the things that we kind of pick out. So we're going to go through, I'm hoping this is like 20 minutes maybe, so if I go too fast, I'm sorry, and if you can't hear me, I'm going to try my hardest, but I know when I flip this around that sometimes it's harder to hear, so I'll try to stay as close to the mic as I can so you can hear it a little bit better. But just to start out with a couple little tips. So I'm sure you have probably all heard that it is better when you're shopping at the grocery store, if you're trying to eat healthy and eat clean, to shop the perimeter of the grocery store. So not really going down into those aisles in the middle, because that's where a lot of your processed foods are going to be. And now you will have to get some of those things from like the baking aisle or like peanut butter and all that kind of stuff. But I can show you what some of the better options are to choose between some of those. But really spending, I mean, we probably spend 30 minutes in the produce section when Trey and I are both together. And that's when we split up and get things separately. And then by the time we get done in the produce section, we've really got like half of a cart worth of fruits and vegetables. So it's really a lot of what you want, a really colorful cart by the time you get done in the produce section. So that's one of the things that we always try to emphasize. Another thing that we try to emphasize a lot is making sure that you are shopping in season when you can. Hey, Erin Beth. When you can, because then you're going to get things for a little bit cheaper. And I'll post some stuff about that later, but always paying attention to your ads, always paying attention to what kind of fruits and vegetables may be in season, what you can get that's on special, and that kind of thing. So I'm just going to walk you around and kind of show you what we look for and what we look at. So and we do not have a fancy Kroger yet. We are getting one at some point. They're going to expand ours, so we still have kind of a smaller Kroger, but we're going to get a Kroger Marketplace at some point, so that'll be awesome. But here you go. Okay, so first things first, in our Kroger, when you walk in, they always have kind of the specials right at the front, and it looks like they're actually really well stocked. So if I needed to get groceries right now, I probably should. But they have strawberries, blackberries, and raspberries on sale. And so what I would normally do, because I have a toddler at my house and we cannot go without strawberries, we automatically every single time get strawberries, grapes, bananas, and apples. So we're always getting all of those things regardless. Now, strawberries were pretty expensive here for a little while, and so they were like $5 a carton, and so we had to not get them for just a little bit. But a couple things you can do. So these strawberries, as you can see, are 2 for $5, and so what I would probably do is get at least 2. Sometimes I would even get 4 of these, and I would freeze 2 of them. So I would cut the top off, freeze 2 of them, use them in my shakes, and then use the other 2 for either snacks, fruit, you know, to have during the week, or for the pancakes that we gave you the recipe for. So that's one of my favorite things. Now I'm gonna do an entire post here about organic versus not organic. We personally are not very good about this. We don't do a lot of organic foods. There are some lists, and I will post those later, but there's something called the Dirty Dozen and then the Clean 15. And so the Dirty Dozen is actually a list of 12 foods that tend to have more pesticides on them, and they're generally your fruits and vegetables that don't have a thick skin. And so that's where a lot of people, if you are trying to eat more clean and more healthy, and you're worried about some of those extra pesticides and things like that, that's where you can kind of you can use that rule of thumb when you're looking through. So we'll post those later. I always grab a ton of apples. They're really good for snacks. I normally eat them with some natural peanut butter. We normally go for, I'm not a huge fan of Fresh Delicious, I'm going to go ahead and say that. But we get either Fuji apples or sometimes Granny Smith, but really, hey, how are you? Good.
Yeah.
I'm like,
We ran out of milk.
That happens. So then you're at the grocery store at 8 a.m. Always end up seeing people you know. Oh my, that's so funny. So we normally get the, let me see if I can find them. Well, there's all sorts of different ones, but my favorite apples are actually the Honeycrisp apples, but they always end up being expensive. So, okay. So grapes, I mean, most of this stuff is going to be about the same, regardless of where you are. So I don't tend to get a lot of things from here, but when I do, I love some sweet potatoes, and I actually did not start liking sweet potatoes until I started eating more healthy. And so that is something that a lot of times I'll steam them. We'll put them in the microwave and just poke holes in them and steam them that way. Sometimes we'll bake them, put them into different things like casseroles and stuff like that. So really love them. Don't do as many of the regular potatoes anymore as I used to, but sweet potatoes for sure. Avocados. So I had kind of told you guys a little bit about being able to check to see if they're ripe. And so let me see if we have one that, okay, so this little thing, if you pop that off and look down inside it, it's kind of hard to see, but that one's a little bit more green. So when they're bright, either bright green or a little bit greener like that one is, instead of being, I don't want to pop too many of them off, but these are actually all fairly ripe. So all of these, based on how they feel, I would end up being able to use pretty quickly. But if it's like still black or dark brown, then it's probably not ripe yet. So, okay, so I mean, when it comes to like just your regular groceries, I mean, like I said, we spend a lot of time in the produce section, just getting this kind of stuff. Now, when it comes to salad mix, we tend to just get romaine hearts because we find that they're a little bit cheaper. When it comes to picking a lettuce, you want to choose something that's not iceberg. So iceberg is going to be the one when it comes to the nutritional content is going to have the least amount, and so you want to try to get something that's not iceberg. So we actually get these romaine hearts, and we chop them up at the beginning of the week ourselves. We just, you know, chop the tail ends here off and then chop it up and put it in a great big Tupperware container in our fridge and just leave it. We also always have carrots on hand, so we always get some of these little baby carrots. When we're roasting carrots that we want to use, I'll end up getting these kind instead, that are like the actual like longer version of the carrot, and use those instead of the baby ones, but the baby ones are just fine too. So I don't really get a lot of these. The only time I get any of the blends is when I need some spinach for either a recipe or if I'm putting spinach in my shakes, and then sometimes I'll get it then, or the bags. But let me show you another thing. So we were talking a little bit about how to save some time with prep. So normally when this is fully stocked, it's really pretty, but it's clearly not. But this is your pre-cut veggie area. And so, I mean, there are sweet potato pieces, there are Brussels sprouts already done with seasoning on them, and of course you do have to be careful with the ones that are pre-seasoned about how much salt they may have on them, so you just want to pay attention. I don't know if they tell you. Yeah, so this one, Brussels sprouts, garlic, canola oil, extra virgin olive oil, black pepper. So there's no salt, but there is some oil, so you just want to make sure that you're paying attention to that, because it's just like when you make a salad, you can take it from healthy to not as healthy really, really quickly. So you want to pay attention to some of those things. There's already vegetables cut up, ready to go, like ready to go roasted. So those are some of the things you need to be watching for. This one, still actually in pretty good shape, but it's on sale for $1.99. So this would be, I would probably buy both of those and cook them tonight for dinner. And sometimes they can take the place of either something you've already prepped that maybe you could still hang on to and do tomorrow night for dinner instead. Or if you hadn't prepped anything yet and you're looking for a healthy option, instead of going through a drive-through and getting dinner, just come through Kroger, grab a rotisserie chicken, grab a pack of those vegetables, get some rice. You can cook it all within 10 minutes and you'll have a healthy meal instead of getting something that's fast food. This right here is one of my favorite things. It's something I hadn't really started eating until I started doing more of a clean eating diet, but it's broccoli slaw, and it is really, really, really good when you make it almost like you saute that in a pan with chicken and put some rice with it, and it's almost like stir fry. one of my favorite things ever. So that is your pre-cut veggie area, and so definitely some good options there. A lot of these dressings, so we get asked a lot about dressings, so there are going to be some that are pre-made dressings that are going to be better than some of the others, but some of the things you need to look at. So I personally love the ones that are made with yogurt. I don't do a lot of pre-made dressings because I make a lot of them on my own, but you need to look at the sugar content. So this is only 2 grams, but that is for 2 tablespoons. So you have to be a little bit careful about sugar content and sodium. So 200 milligrams of sodium is kind of a lot, but it's definitely something that's made with yogurt. It's not made with like mayonnaise or anything like that. It's going to be a little bit better, but you just need to be careful when it comes to those types of things, so making sure that you're paying attention. Same thing with some of these pre-mixed like guacamole packets. A lot of times they will have more salt added into them than maybe what you would do if you made the guacamole on your own. Bananas, all those types of things. I did watch a video the other day talking about whether if you're getting organic things, if you need to get organic bananas or not. Bananas are one of those things that the skin is so thick on them that you probably don't need to necessarily worry as much about organic. Okay, so when it comes to breads and things like that, I tend to avoid a lot of bread. Not that it's necessarily low carb dieting that I'm going for, but there's just some versions of bread that are better, and I'll show you the Ezekiel bread is actually what I use, so it's more of a sprouted grain bread than some of these that have a lot of preservatives and a lot of enriched kind of ingredients. But I will show you right here, we use these flat outs so much I cannot even begin to tell you. So we normally get the multigrain, which is this kind right here. So it's got a ton of fiber. It doesn't have a lot of added ingredients. Find it, hold on. Yeah, so it's only got 1 gram of sugar, which is good. You always want to pay attention to the sugar. 240 milligrams of sodium, which, again, you kind of have to take that. Rule of thumb, I mean, I look for 200 or less a lot of times, so 240 is a little bit much for a wrap, but this will probably be one of the 2, sometimes 3 carbs that I get a day, and I normally use them at lunch for a turkey wrap, or you can use them like we talked about with the fajita mixture at dinner to make like a burrito instead. So that's something that you can do with those. I also sometimes use them for what we call flat out pizzas, and so we'll put a little bit of homemade marinara sauce, some turkey pepperoni, tons of vegetables, and a little bit of cheese, and put it in the oven and make like a little pizza. So it's really good. When it comes to picking out deli meat, so there are tons of preservatives in deli meat, so we tend to not get a lot of them, but if you are going to pick something, we always go with something that's going to be low sodium. And so I normally only ever get turkey, and so I'll get turkey and it'll be a low sodium turkey. So you don't necessarily have to give up any of those things, but you just have to be a little more mindful of kind of which kind you're choosing. So I use those for wraps a lot as well. They're unpacking a lot of things, so I'm not going to get all up in their business, but something I did want to show you. So I noticed this the other day. So when it comes to things like feta, okay, so you would normally think, well, I'm going to go with a fat-free feta, right? Because that sounds like it should be better. So the fat-free feta versus the regular feta, I don't know if you can see. So the regular feta has 260 milligrams of sodium and 0 sugar, whereas the other has 260 milligrams of sodium and 1 gram of sugar, which really doesn't make a huge difference. But if we are trying to limit sugar in our diets, you might as well go with the full fat version of the feta rather than the fat-free, because you're using it in your diet as a healthy fat. So you want it to actually have that fat content and be able to use it for that purpose. And so picking something that's fat-free, although sounds a lot better, really because you're not eating a ton of fatty foods, you want to have that full fat version, if that makes sense. So, okay. Some other things, so we talked a little bit about breakfast. So I do a lot of breakfast burritos, so picking out turkey sausage, turkey bacon, those types of things. Again, trying to get something low sodium if you can. There are still a lot of preservatives in anything that's like this. So it's already been fully cooked. And so because it's been fully cooked, it needs to have some preservatives in it so that it can be thrown into the microwave and be cooked really quickly. So just be very mindful of those types of things. It's always better to get fresh meats if you can, and cook them yourself and season them yourself, just because it's going to be a lot healthier for you that way. But we use those types of things all the time. I actually really love these, so the turkey sausage crumbles. But again, on the scale of the healthiest items, it may not be the best. So I spend a lot of time, actually my husband spends most of the time in the fresh meat area. So at our Kroger, it seems like chicken breasts are always on sale, and so we will actually buy many packs of these and put a bunch of them in the fridge. Well, I mean a bunch of them in the freezer. We do at least 2 packs a week, either in the crock pot. So we normally do at least 1 pack in a crock pot, and then we have a bunch of chicken. We grill some, we bake some, and like I said, we put a bunch in the freezer. So anytime it's on sale, that is something that will stay in your freezer. If it's a deep freeze, it can stay a little bit longer, but normally I think it's about 6 months you can keep in the freezer. And that's true for a lot of your different meats. And so we get a lot of ground turkey too. I prefer the 90. You do have the 93.7, but then you've also got the 85.15. I always get the 93.7. Sometimes it's a little bit more expensive to get ground turkey than it is ground beef, but it definitely is just a little bit healthier for you. And then they've also got turkey sausage that you can get, and those are links, but you can always chop them up or do whatever you want with them. But sometimes, like I know for the recipe for the meatballs, that was Megan's recipe, and she uses sausage and beef for hers. I do turkey meatballs, we just use turkey, so you really can kind of do it as to whatever kind of preference you have. We also eat a lot of deer meat in our house, and so we will use deer meat sometimes in place of ground turkey and that kind of thing. There's really nothing down, well actually, I take that back. So down the cereal breakfast food aisle, I don't really do a lot of cereal. I don't find that a serving size is worth it to me. It's not necessarily that it's unhealthy, but if you actually look at the back of the boxes for most cereals, a serving size is like 3/4 of a cup. And so that's really not a lot of food. It's definitely not something that will be filling and will not keep me full long enough in the morning, so I don't do that. I did want to show you guys, so when we talk about old-fashioned oats, these are the kind that we're talking about. And I've got some other organic ones in the organic section that I'll show you, but these are the ones that we're kind of talking about. So you want to get not necessarily the quick minute ones, because again, you have to think about anything that's going to be made super quickly that's not already all natural ingredients has to have some sort of preservative in it, because otherwise it's a lot harder to make those things faster. And so we do an entire batch of old-fashioned oats every single Sunday, and we portion it out into half-cup containers and put a little bit of stevia and a little bit of cinnamon on the top, and it makes, I think, 6 of them. So I have breakfast for the entire week when we do that. So we do it every single time, and sometimes we'll split it, and my husband will have some, and sometimes it's just mine. So again, thinking through shopping on the perimeter and not necessarily down the center. So really nothing down the cookie, cracker, that aisle. If you do get like saltines, which we'll have sometimes, I always get the saltines that are the wheat ones. Something else that I didn't point out over in the produce section, there is a fresh salsa. I don't know if I had any, that might be why I didn't, but I'm about to show you guys the salsa aisle. So in thinking through salsas, anything that is jarred for the most part is going to have added sugar. And so if you're doing any kind of plan like what we do for the 21-day fix, you actually count those as a purple, which is a fruit, because of the added sugar, versus ones that are going to be all natural ingredients that are just vegetables, and then you would count it as a green, which is the vegetable. So pretty much any of these, I mean, you can use most of these salsas, but I prefer the ones that would count as a vegetable rather than fruits, just because I get more vegetables in the day. But a serving size is a cup for vegetables and fruits, so a cup of salsa is a ton, so you're probably not going to eat that much. So just keeping some of those things in mind. Tortillas is something else. He's restocking those, so I won't get in his way, but getting whole wheat tortillas is always a better option than trying to get something that's like low carb, because again, it's going to have more sugar. So it may be less carbs, but it's going to have more sugars. So getting either corn tortillas, which is what I use when we make tostadas, or a whole wheat version is definitely kind of the way to go. Another staple we have in our house is tuna. So again, making sure that if you're going to get tuna, that you get it packed in water, not in oil, which I feel like a lot of people know at this point. I actually really love the packets. And it's going to sound really silly, but the reason why I love the packets so much more is because I don't have to squeeze the excess liquid out of them. They're pretty much already ready to go right out of the pack. Something about undoing the can, opening up the can of tuna and then having to get the water out drives me nuts. I don't know why. When you're picking like any kind of beans and things like that, make sure that you're getting the kind that are not the seasoned and not the regular, but they have no salt added. You don't necessarily have to get the organic ones. It's kind of the same rule of thumb. But if you can find, and I don't know where they are right now, but they have some that are reduced sodium. So always being mindful of sodium and sugar. Those are the two big things that you're going to want to pay attention to when it comes to labels and when it comes to things that you're picking at the grocery store. So getting anything you can that's low sodium is going to be better for you than some of the others. I will show you here in just a second. So we make our own pasta sauce. I'm going to show you the jarred ones here in a second, but we make our own. It's really easy to do because you can just kind of put it on the stove and let it cook all day long once you get all the ingredients in. But these, where is it? Oh, here they are. These are the best to use if you're going to be doing that. So this brand, the Cento brand, just because it doesn't have any additives whatsoever. So it's pretty much just like you can see, vine ripened tomatoes, tomato puree. It's got a little bit of salt, a little bit of calcium chloride, and a little bit of citric acid, because the citric acid and the calcium chloride are going to help preserve those tomatoes just a little bit. So if you're not going to get fresh tomatoes, then getting something like that is going to be your next best bet. So you just want to be mindful, again, of those types of things, so that you are getting the healthiest version. Some of these organic ones are also really, really good. So there are options as well. Again, when it comes to jarred pasta sauces, you have to be really careful about all of the added sugar. So just looking at those labels and picking one that doesn't have a ton of sugar, but this one's got 9 grams. 9 grams of sugar for a half of a cup serving. So you're much better off either making your own or finding one that's all vegetable or all natural, because it's going to be a lot better for you. So be very careful about anything that claims to be sugar-free, or you know, if they say low sugar, just watch what else there is, because a lot of times if they take down the sugar content, they bump up the sodium content, and that's not necessarily what you want. So again, fresh meats, it's always good if you want to splurge a little bit and get something from the deli. Let's talk for just a second about, so clearly you kind of want to avoid the mayonnaise. So that was really hard for me because I love mayonnaise, but I also realized that I was eating mayonnaise a lot of times when I was having sandwiches, and now because I don't eat as much bread, I don't have as many sandwiches, so it makes it a little bit easier. But if there are recipes that you have that you use mayonnaise for, I know a lot of times chicken salad and things like that, you can actually sub out some Greek yogurt and use that instead. So avoid the mayonnaise, don't go for it. Also, more salad dressings, be very careful with these. Really the only ones that I ever go for are going to be more of your balsamic vinegar based or vinaigrette based dressings, but just a very small amount of them, because again, that's something that a salad can turn very unhealthy very quickly, but being very careful of fat-free, light, low sugar, all of those kind of like catchy things, and comparing what the back of those nutrition labels look like. And that's something that we're always here to help people do, is to really look at those. I mean, I am not a nutritionist, I will tell you that, I mean, over and over and over again. So a lot of what I've learned by doing a lot of reading and a lot of research. But as a pharmacist, I did learn how to look at ingredients for things, as we do it with medications too, and figure out kind of, especially when it comes to more chemically based things, what's a preservative and those types of things. So always here to help with that kind of stuff. So if you ever have any questions and you're in one of our groups, or you just want to ask us a question about it, let us know. Okay, so when it comes to peanut butter, I've not gotten on the almond butter train yet. A lot of people love almond butter. I think it's kind of expensive. And so I'm a little cheap when it comes to that, but people really like it. So this is like $7.99 for a jar of almond butter. I can't do it, not yet. So I always go for the Jif Natural is what we get. And so it's got 3 grams of sugar, which is better than a lot of the others that you'll see. 80 milligrams of sodium, and it's a 2 tablespoon serving. And so on our plans that we do, we actually have what's called our teaspoons. And so we don't get a ton of room for things like peanut butter, but I have at least some peanut butter every day. A lot of times I have a little bit in my shake in the mornings, and then sometimes it's just a dip that I use for like apples or banana or something like that. So that's the type that I like. Jif is my favorite brand. There are some others, but a lot of them have honey added in. I'm not a huge fan of honey. Some people are. So again, just knowing what you like, being able to pick some of those things out. So that's where some of that peanut butter can come from. It's really good on top of those pancakes, the banana oat pancakes. Just a little bit of peanut butter with some syrup and fruit is really, really good. I have to have my coffee. So I always buy some coffee, and then what goes in mine, I get the Veranda Blend by Starbucks. It's my favorite. But what goes in mine is stevia, which will be in the next aisle, and almond milk. So it doesn't really taste a whole lot different to me than creamer and sugar that I was using. So I really, really like it. I didn't even like coffee before I started doing this, but I tried to cut out some processed sodas and ended up with coffee as my alternative. So, okay, when it comes to your syrups, I'm trying to find the one. So you want to get a pure maple syrup for baking, and then you also want to get an agave style, here it is, type syrup, which I knew nothing about this until I started eating a lot better. And agave is actually really, really good. So it's organic maple agave is what we use, but again, it's going to just be, it's made with pure agave and then pure maple syrup. So you can see what you want to find is something that has a short list of ingredients, and so this has a pretty short list of ingredients. Anytime you find something that's got a long list of ingredients, so this one's a lot different. So you can see high fructose corn syrup, which we all know in moderation is not bad, but it's not something you want to put in your body all the time. But then if you look at those last couple, I mean, it says flat out preservatives, natural and artificial flavor, smoke flavor. I mean, it's got some things in there that you don't necessarily want. And I can tell you that the taste is, there's not a huge difference in the taste. So I always try to tell people that when it comes to trying to eat healthier, first of all, you can't do it all at the same time. Second of all, you need to pick the things that mean the most to you and figure out kind of what your version of an 80-20 plan is. So this music's really loud, I apologize. So here's another area. So we always get stevia. We actually get just the generic version a lot of times, but you can get stevia in the raw. A lot of times there will be, like right now it's on sale, and I normally have a coupon for it, so sometimes it comes out cheaper. Some of the other things that you may end up switching to are, we use coconut sugar for some of our recipes now where maybe we didn't used to, and so that's another area sometimes that you can find some corners that you're trying to cut. So when I talked about using stevia in my coffee instead of sugar or even artificial sweeteners. So that's something else you kind of want to avoid. So it used to be Splenda for me, and that's not necessarily the best option. So try to avoid that as much as I can. So using stevia is definitely, it was a little bit of an adjustment because it doesn't have as strong of a flavor, but it still gives you that sweetness without being super artificial. And so it's always the route you want to go down. Okay, I'm gonna try to finish this up and wrap this up for you guys, just to show you. So I'm gonna go to the almond milk. Hopefully that has some in this case. Sometimes I have to go more toward the organic. We don't do a lot of frozen things anymore. We'll get frozen vegetables, but that's pretty much the only frozen type stuff that we ever really get. Okay, let's see. They do, okay. So, almond milk. The deal with almond milk is you want to get the unsweetened version, so you don't want to get the kind that has the added sugar in it. We get the unsweetened original. A lot of people I know also like the vanilla almond milk as well. I'm not going to pull them out and compare the back of them, but it is going to be a little bit different in the content. I think, I mean, they have the same calories, but I'm not sure what the breakdown is. But almond milk stays good for a really long time. Like those are good until April 8th. So we always get like 2 cartons every week because we go through it pretty quickly. We use it in our shakes every day as well, which is always my breakfast. I actually had it in the car on the way to the grocery store. So we use it for that. We use it for baking. We use it for those pancakes that we posted. They have it. So that's what we always use it for. Sour cream, again, we're going to kind of avoid that as much as we can. Cottage cheese is something that we eat a lot of, and it counts as a protein if you're doing any kind of 21-day fix type program. And so again, getting the full fat kind, don't get the fat-free kind, because if you look at kind of what takes the place of that, I mean, because you know, fat-free food may look better for you on the surface, but a lot of times to make it still taste good, they put things in it that aren't that great. Yogurt is something else. I've never been able to get on the yogurt train. It's not my favorite thing, and so I don't like yogurt. A lot of people do. So a lot of people will do Greek yogurt. The Yoplait is what the regular yogurt is what my daughter eats, but a lot of people will get Greek yogurt and use it as a breakfast or just as a snack. So you can also use the plain Greek yogurt in a lot of your baking or other things that you may do. Eggs, we get tons and tons and tons of eggs, which I'm pretty sure, and this just me talking, maybe it's not right, but I'm pretty sure you can freeze eggs. I'd have to look that up, but if you are somebody who doesn't like yolks and only wants to do egg whites, you can do that. I will tell you, you get a lot more egg whites than you do full eggs when you're kind of figuring out what portions look like. But these products are actually just fine as well. I know my coach uses these because she is always in a hurry and doesn't want to take the time to do actual eggs, and so she'll just use the egg beaters, making sure that you're just using, I mean, all it is egg whites, or all it is like natural egg. Cheeses, again, we don't do a ton of, but you will need sometimes like a little bit of shredded cheese, a little like a cheese slice. I absolutely love these little packs. They're on sale right now too, but the little cheese and nut packs. So they have the Sargento brand, then they also have a generic version, which I've had both of, and those are 10 for 10. But they're just great because they have, I mean, it'd be a good snack, but they've got some fruit and they've got your nuts, and then they've got some cheese in there too. So those are always a good option of stuff for kind of a snack option. I don't really do much butter. I know there is a type, and I'll have to wait for Megan to tell me what kind she uses. I can't remember. I think it's either the Smart Balance, or maybe it's an I can't believe it's not butter type thing. But I know she cannot give up butter for certain things, and so she'll use one of those products. I can't remember what it is. So one thing that I'll tell you is sometimes a little bit more expensive, and you don't necessarily need it, is all of these frozen fruits. So it's definitely good from a prep standpoint if you don't have time to freeze your own fruit, but they're super expensive. So if fruit is on sale in the deli area, go ahead and get it and freeze it yourself rather than wasting money on something that's already frozen. Okay, so here's the organic aisle, and let me just show you a couple things that we always pick out. So if you have toddlers at home and they love things like We call them, they're fig bars is what they are, but if they love like little breakfast bars, we always get these fig bars. And she loves them. Her favorite ones are the strawberry, but they have all sorts of different flavors. So those are some good alternatives for your kiddos if you're looking for something like that. There's a whole section that has almond flour, wheat flour, there's organic honey, there is more almond butter, all of those types of things. I'm trying to see. Okay, so this is something else that we get all the time. So this liquid aminos. So if you like stir fry, if you like fajita or anything that has that kind of Asian flavor to it, grab you some liquid aminos and use those in the place of soy sauce. Tastes just the same, so good, but way less sodium. It's a much better option for you. And then the other things I was going to show you, we get these steel cut oats. So old-fashioned oats and steel cut oats, you can actually do either one, but we get the steel cut oats and that's what we make every week. And then the last thing I'll show you, so unfortunately we avoid the ice cream aisle, which makes me very sad sometimes, but there are actually some really great clean recipes that use almond milk and fresh fruit to make your own kind of sorbets and ice creams, and they're actually really good. So the last thing I wanted to show you is this Ezekiel bread. So it's kept in the freezer right past the organic section in our Kroger, but it is, we get the low sodium kind, so the orange one. Actually I think we might get the orange. I think it might be this one that we get. Now I'm confused because they're all together. But essentially it's a sprouted grain bread, and so that's why it has to be kept in the freezer, because it doesn't have the preservatives that normal bread has, and so they keep it in the freezer to keep it good, but you use it just like you would anything else. And I actually have English muffins. Ooh, I've never gotten English muffins. Love me some English muffins with a little bit of egg and cheese and some turkey bacon. It's good stuff. So we get the Ezekiel bread and we use it either for open face sandwiches, so you could use it with the meatballs to make a meatball sandwich, or just for toast in the mornings or whatever you may use it for. You can pop it in the microwave real quick to make it softer. We've used it for grilled cheeses and defrosted it and then put it in the toaster or put it in the skillet with the cheese on it. So another section that's got some almond milk if they don't have it back there, so we don't always get the silk version unless we have a coupon. But anyway, all right, so I hope that was somewhat helpful. I know I talked really fast, and I apologize for that. I didn't get as many crazy looks as I thought I would, so that's kind of fun. But I hope that's at least a good brief overview of kind of how we shop at the grocery store. And as you could see, I really didn't go down a lot of those main, those middle aisles. There were some that I got to skip completely, which is always nice, because really there's not anything down there that you need unless you have kids. And then I'll tell you, sometimes you end up with fruit snacks and who knows what else. Our kids eat healthy most of the time. I mean, one of them still gets baby food, but not all the time. I mean, and neither do I. I don't eat healthy all the time. And it's one of those things where I would prefer, if I'm going to spend extra calories, to spend them eating out places, rather than buying a bunch of junk that I'm going to keep in my house that's going to be entirely too accessible. So I tend to not buy those things at the grocery store, just because I know that if I have them, I have zero willpower. And if there's candy in the house, I'm going to eat it. If there's cookies in the house, I'm going to eat it. Which is why I'm not a fan of this season, because it is time for Girl Scout cookies. But anyway, that is how we shop at the grocery. I hope that was helpful. Hold on, let me turn my NPR. And if you have any questions, please let us know. I know the sun's kind of crazy. Let us know. That was actually really fun. It made me think about what we do in the grocery, because I feel like I'm always on autopilot when we go in there. So now it's like, oh, this is why we choose this, and this is why we do this. We have amassed a lot of information about different types of products and what you can find. Of course, we're limited here because we really only have Walmart, Kroger, and then a couple smaller places, but those are our major ones. So it does limit us a little bit in what we can get. If we ever got a Whole Foods or anything like that, oh my goodness, it would be amazing. It would be amazing. because I hate having to scour the entire town for a spaghetti squash when I want one. They actually didn't have one when we were in there. So if you wanted spaghetti squash to go with your meatballs, you'd be out of luck this week, which happens to us a lot. So knowing what else you can use in place of some of those items is definitely helpful. Same thing with like zucchini noodles, because a lot of times they'll have zucchini noodles pre-cut and pre-spiralized in packages where that pre-cut veggies were. And so that's always really nice too, to just be able to pick some of that stuff up. Sometimes it costs a little bit more, but if you are really short on time, but you really, really, really want to try to prep food and to have things ready to go and to save yourself time on the back end, it's very helpful to have that kind of stuff. So I hope everybody has a good Thursday. I've got a couple meetings today, and then I'm working on my thesis. It's almost done. It's going out to my committee today. So yay. Okay. I hope you guys have a great day. And if you have any questions, let us know. Bye.